As one goes through life, they'll come to face many aspects of moods and emotions, and for some, it may reach a point where they must seek professional help. The American Psychological Association has developed a list of potential trouble signals one must look out for in case of that. These being feelings of hopelessness, deep and lasting depression, disruptive fears, sudden mood shifts, thoughts of suicide, compulsive rituals such as washing of one's hands, sexual difficulties, and hallucinations. If you've ascertained that you possess one or most of these issues, it is important that you seek out a potential therapist for your treatment. To do this, you must go through potential calendars, some of which you'll need to describe your problem to and learn their treatment methods. After that, you can ask questions about your own feelings about them, which in turn will slowly build an emotional bond between your potential therapist, which, as you know, is the most important factor in any effective therapy. Those actively seeking a therapist, there are at the very least four different kinds, each with their own training. To start off, we have the clinical psychologist, which most are psychologists with PhDs that include research training, or PsyDs that focuses on therapy. Both are supplemented by internships and often postdoctoral training. About half of them go to work in agencies and institutions, while the other half go into private practice. Second, we have psychiatrists. Psychiatrists are physicians who specialize in the treatment of psychological disorders. Not all psychiatrists have extensive training in psychotherapy, but most MDs and or DOs they can prescribe medication, so they're the ones that see to the most serious problems. Next, we have clinical or psychiatric social workers. These are social workers who offer psychotherapy to people with everyday personal or family problems. About half of them have earned the National Association of Social Workers designation of clinical social workers. Finally, we have counselors, which can take many forms. You can have a marriage and family counselor that handles problems that arise within family relations. There's a clergy who provides counseling to countless people. And then you can have an abuse counselor who specializes in substance abusers and child and spouse abusers in conjunction with their victims.
Okay, guys. So we'll be talking about the biomedical therapies in preventing psychological disorders. Now, in the previous group probably talked about psychotherapy and how that treats. They use that to treat psychological disorders. But we will be talking about biomedical therapies. Now, this may involve either physically altering the brain's like functioning and its chemistry using like drugs. It could also involve using magnetic impulses, using electrical stimulation, and other kinds of like procedures. But the most commonly used method in biomedical therapy is drugs, and that's what I will be talking about. So let's go. So, antipsychotic drugs, or yeah. So, and yes, I moved a little closer. Okay. So this was actually accidental. The discovery of drugs that treated, you know, psychosis, so which is the impairment of thought and emotion to the point in which you lose contact with external reality. So, drugs like chloropromazine, which was sold as like Thorazine at the time, they found, oh, it actually does like reduce hallucinations. And that was really great, because now they were able to treat people with schizophrenia and other psychotic mental psychological disorders. So the and what was really interesting to find out was that the molecules for the most like conventional like antipsychotic drugs, they were very similar to that of dopamine, which meant that when they entered the system, they could block the receptor sites, because they were like, let's say the holes for dope to receive dopamine were square shaped. They were also square shaped, so they could enter and block those also, and then dopamine itself could not enter, which reduced activity in those areas, which of course in that turn reduced hallucinations. And this really paired with the belief that it was an overactive dopamine system that contributed to things like schizophrenia. But the issue was now that these antipsychotic drugs, they were working really well, but they had really harsh side effects, tremors, twitches, like that were similar to Parkinson's, they had sluggishness. It wasn't really something that was fun, but it treated the schizophrenia. It got to like it was as bad as like prolonged usage of antipsychotic drugs could lead to something called tardive dyskinesia. Okay, and this was like this is like involuntary like movement of like muscles, facial muscles. You could be grimacing, frequently blinking, twitching like of like the cheek and the nose like muscles, things that obviously you weren't doing and were not under the patient's control. But recent like antipsychotic drugs that they've come up with like Ripen, they call it risperidone and olanzapine. They're found to work better, and they also have less like side effects. Okay, and still, despite all the side effects, when these antipsychotic drugs are paired with life skill programs and family support, they have helped a lot of schizophrenic patients, and they've helped them leave the mental hospitals and start trying to live a better life. And schizophrenia is treatable, and you are able to recover fully from it, and it has led to a lot of recoveries. So anti-anxiety drugs. Now, anti-anxiety drugs, which are like very similar to like alcohol, things like Xanax and Ativan, they basically depress the central nervous system. Now, this means that they can't be used with alcohol in case of death. Anyway, so they were often like successfully used in combination with therapy to treat types of like anxiety, things like phobias and OCD and PTSD. However, these drugs are there were a lot of criticisms because for it. For instance, like every time that the patient felt like any form of anxiety, they would just pop a Xanax, and that became like a learned response. Every single time they felt a tinge of, oh, I don't really think I can do this, they took a pill. And these drugs are also very addictive, which meant that if a regular user stopped taking this, like taking their drugs, anti-anxiety drugs, they would experience increased anxiety, insomnia, and withdrawal symptoms much more severe, okay, than they had before they started taking these drugs. And over like many years, treatments for anxiety disorders and OCD disorders and PTSD, like the amount of people who had them like nearly like doubled, and then the percentage and proportion of people who were taking drugs for these disorders also increased. So now I found that depressing the system obviously yielded really bad effects. So what did they start using for treating anxiety, for treating anxiety disorders? Well, they started using antidepressants. So antidepressants. Now, these were named after their ability to, lift people's spirits, and I suppose they now started using them to treat OCD and anxiety and PTSD. And the way they worked is that they just increased the availability of neurotransmitters like noradrenaline and serotonin, which increased arousal and mood, and helped people who were feeling depressed, anxiety, help them feel good. And the most common ones were Prozac, and also Zoloft and Paxil, and they blocked the reuptake of like excess serotonin from the synapses. So they were used for not only treating things like depression, they were used for treating things like strokes as well. And that's why they were not really called antidepressants. They were more or less called SSRIs, which were selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors rather than antidepressants. Now, some older antidepressants, they work by blocking the reabsorption or the breakdown of the noradrenaline and serotonin. So they were effective, but they had more like potent side effects like dry mouth and weight gain and hypertension and dizzy spells. So they weren't as attractive to people who were suffering from anxiety to want to take. Um, but they to administer them they use like a patch, and they bypass it, like the intestines and the liver, and they put it there to help with the side effects. So some of the most so now patients with depression, they don't take antidepressants and wake up the next day smiling and thinking everything's gonna be all right. It usually takes up to like 4 weeks to see the effect of the antidepressant in the patient, and you can even like it's a side effect of that is like a diminishing like sexual desire. um, One of the possible reasons is because like the serotonin, the increase of serotonin, it promotes like new synapses, so like new brain cells like being born, and it like reverses stress-induced neuron loss. So it like makes more cells. Okay, and they know that they're trying to now look for like quicker acting antidepressants, um, quicker acting antidepressants, because that way would be more better, because like the ones that they're trying now um, are are happening quicker, but they're also like resulting in hallucinations, and we don't want to go from treating one to having to treat another psychological disorder. So now, antidepressants are not just the only way to treat depression and anxiety. There's also exercise, because exercise increases dopamine levels and noradrenaline levels as well. So usually they've even found that when treating people with these kind of disorders, doctors find that it's better to first suggest exercise and then prescribe the medication if the exercise has not worked at all. They've even found that sometimes patients who have like minimal their levels of anxiety and depression are not as severe, that placebos and the real drug itself really bear like very basic like similar results. Yeah, so it's like less so they must first administer first advise that the patient try exercise first, and then if it doesn't work, you give them their drugs. So yeah. Okay. Now, lastly, mood stabilizing medication. So we've talked about antipsychotic, anti-anxiety, and antidepressant drugs, and so now mood stabilizing drugs is like the psychiatric's like arsenal. So one of the type is Depakote. So it was used initially to treat like epilepsy, and it was found like helpful when controlling like manic episodes, like that which are like associated with like bipolar disorder. Another type is salt lithium. It affects like it like helps stabilize like emotional highs and lows of the disorder. So if you go to page 596 of our textbook, which you should have at home, you will see that under mood stabilizing medication, K. Redfield Jameson described the effect lithium prevents my seductive but disastrous highs, diminishes my depressions, clears out the wool and webbing from my disordered thinking, slows me down, gentles me out, keeps me from ruining my career and relationships, keeps me out of the hospital alive, and makes psychotherapy possible. So these mood stabilizing medication for things like bipolar disorder really help people live normal lives. And they found that lithium, people with severe mania, they became well in like less than a week, and their risks of suicide reduced for people who were taking lithium, like people with bipolar disorders. Like it reduced their suicidal thoughts and urges. And So they don't still don't understand fully why lithium works, but it does. So yeah, that's the end of drug therapies.
I'm back, but standing. Mainly because my legs were getting kind of numb in that chair. But anyway, I'm here to present the next biomedical treatment, that being the electroconvulsive therapy or ECT. It operates mainly by manipulating the brain via shocking it. It was first conceived in 1938 when a still awake patient was strapped to a table and forcibly administered roughly 100 volts of electricity straight to the brain. This produced radical convulsions and a brief stint of unconsciousness in them, leaving ECT with a rather barbaric image. But as of today, it's gained a much more kinder and gentler approach. The patient receiving the treatment will first be given an anesthetic and muscle relaxant to prevent the convulsions, and the psychiatrist in charge will then deliver the electric currents in brief pulses of at least 30 to 60 seconds, sometimes only to the brain's right side. Within 30 minutes, the patient awakens and remembers nothing from their treatment or any preceding hours from said treatment. Studies upon studies have confirmed that ECT can effectively treat severe depression in treatment resistant patients who did not respond to drug therapy. After 3 such sessions each week for 2 to 4 hours, 80% or more of people that have taken ECT express like less depression and their condition improved markedly. Shouldn't it be markedly? They show some form of memory loss for the treatment period, but no apparent brain damage was ever recorded. Modern ECT causes less brain disruption than it did back in its earlier years, so that's a plus. ECT also reduces the amount of suicidal thoughts someone goes through and has been credited for saving many lives in its usage over the years. Also, a journal of the American Medical Association editorial concluded that the results of ECT in treating severe depression are among the most positive treatment effects in all of medicine, which was done in 2001. However, I bet you're asking yourself, how does ECT go about treating depression? That is more or less likened to how, like, the electric currents being sent into your brain calms your neural centers, where overreactivity produces depression. Basically, as at the very least, as the book puts it, it's working by weakening the connection in a hyper-connected neural hub in the left frontal lobe of your brain. Now, I get it. It's very impressive of a thing, treating depression with electric shocks, but some people still find it a rather barbaric method, mainly because you're sending shocks into someone's brain. Even though no apparent brain damage is there's a chance it could happen. Maybe. And moreover, 4 out of 10 people that do get ECT therapy relapse back into depression after like 6 months. So that's there. But needless to say, it is still a rather effective method for combating depression and other disorders, I believe. And it should continue to thrive into the near future. Next, we'll be looking at alternative neurostimulation therapies. This has 2 sub-methods, that being magnetic stimulation and deep brain stimulation. Firstly, with magnetic stimulation, it's like ECT, but instead of the electric shocks, it's like repeated pulses via a magnetic coil that hugs the top of your skull. I'll put an image up here so you have a better idea what I'm talking about, but yeah, it's like ECT. But unlike ECT that uses a sleeping patient because of the anesthetics they receive, magnetic stimulation has a wake patient, one that isn't asleep. And so, yeah, that's what happens instead. And it's also known for having, or in this case, lacking many of the side effects that preys upon ECT, being where its only side effect is minor headaches, unlike ECT that has brain seizures, memory loss, and the sort. Yeah. Also, it has an antidepressant relieving effect like ECT, but there's no concrete idea of how that works. One theory is that it energizes the left frontal lobe, which like alleviates depression a little bit, but that's just a theory. Another one is that repeated stimulation may cause nerve cells to form a new functioning circuit through the process of long-term potentiation. Next, we look at deep brain stimulation. This is the method we sometimes turn to when drug therapy and ECT aren't enough to help crack a depressed person's case. This was the method that was first brought up by neuroscientist Helen Mayberg and her colleagues when they were looking at the neural hub that bridges the thinking frontal lobes and the limbic system. In that area lies the overactivity that causes the negative emotions like depression within a person, and so they wanted a treatment that would like excite the neurons there, so they inhibit the negative emotion activity in that neural hub. Get? And so to that degree, she used deep brain stimulation technology in the form of embedded electrodes to stimulate those neurons. And lo and behold, her little experiment worked. In 2003, she treated over like 300 people, and a third of them found themselves responding extremely well to her treatment, to the point where most have become like more talkative, outgoing, and generally less depressed. And 30% have found them have modestly improved. Like it wasn't as big, but it's still better than where they were before. And so we've come to take her thing as like a way of lifting depression and are forwarding with it. Hell, in recent times, it's been like reported that this deep brain stimulation has helped people overcome OCD and some with their drug and or alcohol addictions.
Hello. Today I'm going to talk about cytosurgery, and cytosurgery is actually a surgery that is used for removal or damage of tissue which can cause drastic change to your thoughts and behavior. And this was actually kind of not right, I would say. And then, but then in the 1930s, there was this type of surgical procedure called lobotomy, I believe. And this was actually like touching your nerves, connecting your brain, your frontal lobes with the emotion controlling centers of the inner brain. And this was actually easy and took about 10 minutes or so. And this was used to calm dangerous patients or people that are considered harmful. And then, but then there was a kind of a negative side to it, which was it led more immature and untreated people, and untreated people. And there was also some field cases such as John Kennedy's sister, who was known to be very, very hyper and stuff, and her family met her through lobotomy, which actually failed and made her disabled, I believe. And but then in the 1915, in the US alone, there were like 35,000 people that actually thought that lobotomy. And but then calming drugs, calming drugs were available, and people kind of stopped using lobotomy. And from today, when people are treating patients, lobotomy is like one of the last procedures people actually perform. Like this is one of the last choices, not as popular as before. Another topic I'm going to talk about is stereotypic lifestyle change, which is like you know how nowadays how we like have lots of psychological disorders such as depression, stress, and bipolar disorder and such. We often tend to rely on psychologists to get over this and help us to get over it. But actually, according to one researcher called Stefan Ilradi, our brains were actually never designed to stay at home or do anything. We're actually designed to social interact and do a lot of activities such as what our ancestors used to do, hunt and do for social gathering, and they were like more open more than us, and they were like less depression and such. And according to research, and they were actually, if you actually want to like change these things, you can actually like do things such as exercise, sleep, socialize more, do those and contribute relaxation and so much more. And you also need a lot of nutrition and such. Um, this is more, instead of like doing to TLC if I was to summarize it, instead of doing to psychologists to actually the treatment for it is must, you have to like go through natural changes instead of like doing to psychologist, so that doing walking, relaxation, go to social gathering and be like more sociable and do more fun stuff to do.
So, psychotherapists and your medical therapists believe that the reason why people have psychological disorders are found within them. And of course, the fact that we give labels to people, when someone acts crazy, you all are like, oh, you're sick in the head. Or when someone acts, I don't know, crow, you're like, oh, you're mean, you're crow. So basically, the titles we give to people helps us differentiate abnormal people and normal. And the way abnormal people are like treated to prove their psychological disorders, it's through drugs, as my fellow classmate explained. Basically, the drugs helps them have a better control on their thoughts, change the way they think, and also helps them acknowledge the kind of problem they have. But then there's an opposite view to how like psychologists and other scientists approaches these methods. Not really method, but there's like a view that is like it's best for us to actually prevent the problem instead of us to wait for the problem to happen to then find a solution. Therefore, we're gonna be learning about preventing mental health and building resilience. I apologize if I have like mispronunciation of the words. Thanks. Now we're gonna be talking about preventing mental health. What is this all about? Does anybody know? No one? It's cool. Preventing mental health is all about doing everything that aims into improving the human condition, making their life feel fulfilled, making their life have a meaning, helping them to like believe in their growth regardless of anybody else, regardless of whatever someone says and stuff like that. So they give us an example in the textbook about this rescuer, lifeguard, if I can say that like that. He said one person gave them first aid. Next, he sees a person also trying to drown themselves. He goes ahead and saves them. Same thing happens over and over and over and over. And he runs away, but in his mind, he keeps in mind that it's best to save it's best to prevent the disease than to wait for it to happen in order to cure the disease. Basically, it's better to prevent than to cure. Then as he's going up, he sees a bystander comes and asks him, aren't you going to save these people? Then he's like, no, because it's best to prevent than to cure. So he's going to look for the reason why these people are trying to like end their life and stuff like that. A research made by George Albee and also Yoshikiwa in 2012, it pointed that like there are many factors that lead into like mental issues, mental like depression, or like the alcohol use disorder, and then things like suicide, things like sexism, meaningless work, constant criticism, poverty, things like that. Those negative stuff that, like, even you as yourself, you can be like, this is depressing, too much work. Anyhow, yeah, those kind of stuff leads into depression. People, if you lack control, you're obviously gonna fall into using drugs like alcohol, and if it's too much and you can't really handle it, you're gonna like suicide. So of course, psychology notice pointing that out, think of like ways to make people's life easier. And these ways are, the ways that we can prevent mental health are like, one, you can surround yourself with good people. What I mean by good people is like people that are willing to like push you, give you good criticism. Like, you know, there's always a better way to say things, whether they're like, even if someone is doing something wrong, instead of you to have someone that is like, oh, you're stupid, you shouldn't be doing this, you can have like, okay, next time you should be able to do this and that, instead of choosing to do that, you know. Then you can also like take care of yourself, eat well, because like certain food makes you like boost your emotion. So eat well, treat yourself, drink water, go work out, do what makes you happy, and then like value yourself, be kind to yourself, don't like be too hard with yourself, don't criticize yourself too hard. Like, it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to fail, but like now you're smarter because you know where you did wrong. Now start over and go ahead. Then you can also like set realistic goals. Don't go and be like, oh, in 2 years I'm gonna be a millionaire, stuff like that, and then when in 2 years you realize that you haven't done that, achieved that goal, then you start being all depressed and all mean to yourself. No, none of that. And there are many other ways, like avoid alcohol, because it's so easy to just like give yourself more reason to not do what you're not supposed to do. I understand who can, but yeah, so avoid drugs, because it's easy to just like, fine, I'm sick of it, let me drink alcohol. Fine, I'm sick of it, let me take any other type of drug. And so yeah, there's many other ways, but we're gonna finish here. And then psychology realized that also have a good self-esteem of yourself, believe in you. You are not in a competition with anybody else unless you're playing sports, but yourself. No one else is better than you. You just gotta believe it, have it in the mind. So psychologists realize that people who have like better self-esteem and have like are more like joyful, are like better socially. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. Now we're gonna be talking about building resilience. The definition of resilience is the personal strength that helps most people cope with stress and recover from adversity and even trauma. Straightforward. The ability of you to come up even after going down. Actually going down. So basically what you guys need to remember about building resilience is that it's okay to have failures, to have some low time, to have some challenges, but what you need to remember is that regardless of what happens, there's always a positive side to it. And also, these challenges can lead you into being post-traumatic, into having a post-traumatic growth, which is basically positive psychological change as a result of struggling with extremely challenging circumstances and life experience. So let's say you were like in a car accident, and then the car accident was really bad, so you enter coma, and then it's only after like 3 months that you come alive. You're gonna be more like appreciative of life. You're gonna be like doing things where you're like, I'm not gonna live in the future because the future doesn't belong to me, but I'm gonna make my present as productive as I can. So that's basically an understanding of post-traumatic growth. Because they also give us an example of people who have been like through cancer. My bad. People who have been people who came out of cancer healthier and all that have like have a better appreciation of life, and also what they like appreciate the relationship they have with people. Like, you do things differently, you don't see life as you used to do. Or even like, let's say you failed a math test and you were really sad about that because you thought you would have done better. Of course, next time when you have like the teacher is like, oh, I'm gonna give you another chance to redo the thingy, you're gonna be like more grateful to it and put more effort to it and like study as hard as you could have the first time. So yeah, it's all about this. So wait, are we done? Yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys understood the main points of preventing mental health and building resilience. So bye.